You're recording.
Continue.
Just give it a moment to let everyone get in from the living room. Good morning. This is a hearing before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today is Friday, August 14th. This is an emergency informational hearing regarding licensees in the Seaport to address the complaints received by the board and the Inspectional Services Department regarding the operations of the licensees. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to temporary changes to the open meeting law, which allows us to meet virtually. The hearing will be recorded and will be posted to the city's website. I would ask everyone to please mute yourself. While the vast majority of licensees in the city of Boston are working diligently to adapt to the changing guidance and to provide a safe dining experience for patrons, the board has received numerous complaints of COVID-19 operational violations. Specific to the Seaport, violation complaints include sidewalk seating blocking pedestrian access, patrons waiting in line not social distancing, patrons waiting in line not wearing masks, and patrons waiting in line smoking, patrons standing at the bar area, patrons standing around tables, parties of more than 6 patrons, and tables not separated by 6 feet. The Licensed Premise Unit of the Boston Licensing Board has responded to and investigated each of these complaints and has found that the vast majority of licensees have been in compliance. All licensees have been, any licensee that's been asked to make changes to their operation has done so. Public health and safety are the utmost importance to the board, and the purpose of today's hearing is to ensure our licensees are operating in a way that conforms with the Commonwealth's requirements and also ensures the health, safety, and well-being of the licensees' patrons, their employees, and the general public. We're here to work with you, and we're here as a resource. And now I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, everyone. We're joined today by Commissioner Liam Curran, Commissioner Saxon, Detective Eddie Hernandez from the Licensed Premise Unit, Captain Boyle, and Sergeant Adrian Troy, or Lieutenant, I'm sorry, Lieutenant. Today's meeting is intended to be conversational. We understand the guidelines that were released on Friday and that were put into effect on Tuesday can be confusing. So we wanted to address some of the violations or some of the incident reports we've seen in your neighborhood and also to talk about the new guidelines. I'll briefly go over the recent guidance and then we'll take some questions and comments. Among other things in the governor's updated executive order, food should be plated meals served to a table, or the licensee must ensure that there are no lines and no congregating if patrons pick up their own food at a service area. For example, a food truck. It's recommended that a server is hired to bring the food to a table. An item of prepared food must be ordered at the same time as the initial alcoholic beverage. Food items that are ordered must sufficiently serve the people in the party. The executive order specifically says that potato chips, pretzels, and other prepackaged or manufactured foods do not constitute food prepared on site. The licensee must ensure that masks are worn and social distancing is observed. Reservations are encouraged. Contact information should be collected in case there is a need for contact tracing. And this is a change that we haven't had to address before, but a licensee who wishes to host a private event in a restaurant buyout must now adhere to the indoor and outdoor guidance, which is 50 people outside and 25 people inside. The governor's executive order and accompanying guidance also states that no licensee may permit a line to form, either inside or outside. Lines, so we are strongly discouraging lines outside of your licensed premise. We understand that these guidelines are changing and can be confusing, and we are working diligently to interpret them as well. So we ask you to bring us your questions, and we'll try to work with the administration to get some more clarity. We're here to help you, and we're here to work with you. We want to continue to see you open and to run safely and successfully.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Captain Boyle, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm just, we're here to work with the establishments. We've had some issues, but we've gotten great cooperation from the establishments. We know there's a lot of confusion, so we just want to make sure people, we're here to assist in any way we can at District 6. If you have any issues, you can contact us here and we'll assist.
Thank you, Captain. Lieutenant Troy or Detective Hernandez, did either of you want to add anything?
Lieutenant Troy here. Just that in the last couple of days that we've been monitoring the place in the Seaport, we found everybody compliant and very cooperative, and that's simply what we what we look for is some to work with people to see if we can get through this in the easiest possible manner. And everybody so far has been very compliant in the Seaport district. That's all.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And again, as I mentioned earlier, as the Lieutenant mentioned and the Chairwoman mentioned, everyone has been extremely cooperative. We have not had any issues with our licensed premise unit going out, with the captain and his team going out, and someone not responding or not making adjustments. We know that when we say jump, all of you have said how high, and we want to make clear we're committed to working with you. If you have an idea for an event or an idea about operations and you're not sure if it's permissible, call us, email us. The board and our staff are here working around the clock to try and interpret these guidelines too, and we're looking to be as responsive as possible. We understand this is a learning experience for us, just like it is to you. The guidelines on Friday were new to the board, just like they were to all of our licensees. So while we all understand the intent is to keep people safe with outdoor and limited indoor dining, we know that at times it can feel like a moving target. We're all trying to get through this together. And with that, as the Chairwoman said, we want this to be a conversation. We want to be here to answer any questions or to hear any comments or concerns you may have. So now we'll open it up to our licensees. Not everybody at once.
Can you try to explain to us what the governor means when he says food prepared on site in terms of do food trucks count? There's been a lot of confusion about what constitutes what actual food is allowed to be served. We understand that chips and pretzels do not count, but what constitutes prepared?
We interpret the guidelines to mean that food trucks are allowed. But we suggest that you hire a server to bring the food from the food truck to the table. That's not explicitly spelled out in the guidelines, but I think operationally that might be in the operator's best interest to have a server bring the food to the table so that lines don't form. That's where these guidelines are coming from. They were written with public health in mind first, public health and public safety. And I think over the last couple of weeks, they were working out some of the kinks in the intent of the guidelines is to make sure people don't gather and congregate. So it's just a suggestion about the servers. I don't see it explicitly laid out, but I do see it's our interpretation in Boston that food trucks are permitted.
You know, Joe Dunn had raised his hand with a question.
Yeah, in regards to lines, the issue we have with lines is, we do contact tracing at the entrance, IDing, asking people how they feel, and making sure that everybody is compliant coming in, and a line forms. Unfortunately, now we have 5 or 6 people on the line. We have 2 people doing contact tracing. We've another person doing IDing. We've someone walking the line. So that's, technically, we had an issue last night, but the line, there was no, we told everyone when we were full to go away, and we put a rope 30 feet down at the end, and then people stood behind the rope, which, I don't know how it's not technically a line, but it's just people taking longer getting into our premises.
Joe, I appreciate you working so closely with us on that. I know your team is trying to work out the kinks with the lines forming on their own on the sidewalk. I think let's just keep communicating about it and see what we can do. I know you're not allowing the lines, but sometimes just human nature, people stand in line on a beautiful night hoping that they'll be able to get in. But we do need your cooperation to tell people that they need to have masks in lines and to be socially distanced.
Right, correct.
There's only so much we can control. I know you guys are doing the best you can. And we'll work with you as much as we can too, our team.
Great, thank you.
Todd Weiner?
Hi. Can you talk more about ordering alcohol with food when they sit down at the table? Standard steps of service at our restaurant is we take a drink order, let the guest enjoy a little bit of the time together and come back and take the food order. So that's
a good question, Todd. What's your establishment?
Pastoral on Congress Street.
Okay, the reading of the governor's guidance as they appeared as recently as yesterday, the last time we checked, it did say drink with food, but we were joined at one of our meetings yesterday by the Mass Restaurant Association, and he brought up the same point. It's his interpretation that they weren't intending to change the standard ordering. We haven't seen anything from the governor about that, so I don't want to say that you can. It's my job to just interpret what we're being given.
And
apparently there was a meeting by the Mass Restaurant Association with the administration to iron that out. We were not a part of that meeting.
Okay, so if our guests are there for dinner, we can potentially proceed in our steps of service as normal, as long as we're not encouraging people just sitting and drinking.
I would say so, and we're not out there policing, hiding behind bushes to see if you're giving someone a drink before their appetizer comes 15 minutes later. I just think you should encourage your staff to make sure that the people sitting at the table aren't there purposely just to order rounds and rounds of drinks. The idea is for food and beverage service, and I know you all know that, so keep that in mind.
Okay, and then how do we prevent people from congregating in front of the restaurant when we only have so many tables outside and we go on a wait? How do we disperse those people that are waiting for a table that have made a reservation or on a wait list to get a seat?
Do you take their phone numbers? Maybe you would text them when their table's ready and tell them they can't congregate. I mean, that's just a recommendation. Again, I think the purpose is to not have people close together and clustering. So I don't have a good answer for you, but that might be a suggestion. If other people have ideas what they do as far as reservations and people lining up, you might want to share.
All right, thank you.
And just to build on what the chairwoman said about the drink order, this is not our guidance. We're interpreting it just like you are. And as the chairwoman said, as of yesterday, after we had our call, that Bob Les from the Mass Restaurant Association said that they had a separate conversation that we weren't privy to. We again checked the guidance, and the way it reads on the governor's website as of yesterday was that the food order must be with the initial drink order. As Kathleen said, there may have been a different intent behind it, but it is each licensee's responsibility to read the guidance that's issued by the state and to comply. So we want to be as helpful as possible, but we don't have all the answers, unfortunately.
I have a question about private events. With the rule, I know that we moved into the maximum of 25 people, but there was something that was listed initially was no more than 8 people per 1,000 square feet. I don't know anybody that has a private dining room that could accommodate 8 people in 1,000 square feet. I mean, that's a good portion of the restaurant. And like I said, I guess I'm just curious about that, because if it's not a private event, I can have 2 tables of 6.
Yeah.
In a much smaller space than that. So how important is that, versus, if somebody just says, I'd like to book 2 tables of 6, we say no problem. But if I say I want it to be private, it's a problem?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And the more I think about it, I think, again, the intent is the length of people the length of time that people are staying in the establishment. The longer people are there for, say, a private event that goes for 4 hours, drinking and hanging around each other, that's a different public health issue than two tables of 6 that come for a 90-minute dinner and then leave. Again, I think these were written through the lens of public health and trying to prevent people from staying inside together for long periods of time. Again, I think that's why they're discouraging or they're prohibiting rounds and rounds of drinks where people could stay for 4 or 5 hours just drinking. That's my best guess why they tighten that up.
And we have heard anecdotally from actually one of our licensees who's on here today that before the 25-person maximum indoors, they had experiences with private events where they still said, you know, party of 6 feet apart, another party of 6. But when the people all know each other, it becomes even more difficult to prevent them and kind of police them from standing up, walking to the other table. And I think that is what some people were seeing when they were hosting these private events, is that whether it's a wedding or a birthday party, it becomes very, very difficult for you as the licensee to actually police that. If I know Kathleen and I see her at a table for a private event, it's just human nature to want to go up and walk over and have that conversation. Obviously, that goes against many of the regulations.
Gotcha. So even if we're willing to police it to make sure that they don't do it and have it written in their contract, there's no way around that other than saying just several parties of 6 and it's on you to stay separate and we'll make sure you stay separate. We just can't commit to that group.
If you're having a private event in your establishment, it can only be 25 people.
Yeah.
And the reason is these events are probably longer than a regular table service. And this is my guess. We weren't given an explanation, and they're trying to discourage people from congregating together for long periods of time.
Gotcha. I know, I think it was a little bit, I'm okay with the 25. I get that, and 50 outside, but the 8 people per 1,000 square feet that's basically saying you can't have anything other than giving the entire restaurant for 8 people. And so a lot of our restaurants.
I think, I'm guessing, I wasn't a part of drafting that, but I'm guessing that was drafted in a way to capture even different types of events that weren't taking place in restaurants, perhaps in hotels or convention centers. I'm not sure. It's my understanding that was not written specifically for restaurants.
Gotcha. So we could still do 25 then. Again, properly socially distanced, nobody standing, nobody mixing, mingling, or anything like that. And a little less worried about the square footage.
Yeah, the guidelines say that a restaurant that is doing a buyout or having a private event can have 25 people.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have one more question regarding bar seating.
Yes.
Is that still frowned upon or not allowed?
It's prohibited.
And why is that, when I can have 6 people at a table 10 feet apart from another table and I can't socially distance at a bar?
You can reconfigure your bar with table extensions, but they can't be served from behind the bar. The server would have to walk out from behind the bar and serve that group of people from the restaurant.
No, I understand that, but they can't be sitting at the bar, and I need an extension off the bar.
Yes, because we're still trying to abide by social distancing, and most bars are not proper. They're what, 2 or 3 feet wide, so I don't think there's enough space. Again, that's the state's guidelines, so you would want to put an extension. People cannot sit at the bar.
So if I put an extension on the bar, then that space in the restaurant can be utilized?
Yes, like a perpendicular extension off of the bar to make it work or function as a table.
Understood.
People can't be sitting shoulder to shoulder facing the bartender.
But if there's an extension coming off the bar that puts distance between the guest and the bartender, then that's acceptable?
If it's functioning as a table.
They just cannot be served from behind the bar, though. Whomever is serving them still has to come around.
Okay.
We received
a lot of places have done that successfully. So if you're looking for examples, we can point you to some people who have done that successfully.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We received a message in the chat from Joe Malia of the Envoy Hotel. What is the policy on pets if the guest claims that it is a service dog or emotional support dog? And I know,
yeah, go ahead.
Rebecca on our team actually, I think, has done a fair amount of research into this. Becca, do you want to?
Detective Hernandez has a little bit of input too.
So, one second. Emotional support dogs are not permitted with the state ADA laws. You can have service dogs that are for physical disabilities. That's the only thing that's permitted by the state ADA law for restaurants.
And I know Detective Hernandez has been out a couple times on inspections and has run into similar questions. I know these are hard things to ask when you have customers sitting on your outdoor space.
Yeah, yes, you can make sure if it's a physical or a sensory disability, the dog can be permitted in. Emotional, you can't let anybody in who says it's an emotional support dog. So that's where we're going with that.
And I think it's common knowledge that people can sometimes purchase documentation off the internet. I know some of our team has gone out and asked for identification for these animals, and there's various ones out there. We're not sure that they are real. So again, we're just following the guidelines and interpreting them as they come out.
And you can't ask them what their disability is, but you can ask them what type of service the dog provides. That's sort of a way to find out what kind of dog it is.
But we just have to take them at their word that they're being honest with us. That's okay.
Well, if it's a physical disability, obviously you can tell that, and if it's a sensory, like if they're blind or they can't hear, you'll probably figure that one out too.
But if they say it, even though you can't tell, and I think most of us know most people are fibbing when they're talking about their dogs being service animals. I mean, we just have to, again, we have to take them at their word that it's true.
I don't have an answer for it.
Okay.
You might want to prohibit dogs if you're uncertain how to address those issues.
Well, I said, we ask the questions that we're allowed to ask, and then they say, yes, it's a service animal. Yes, it's, for a sensory issue or a physical issue, and we just have to say, okay. Even though we don't believe it.
I mean, it's at your discretion also.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rebecca in our office just put a link in the chat to state's guidance about service and assistance animals too, as a resource. Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Jason from the Pavilion, and apologies if this has been covered in other calls. This is my first, but the portion of food person, I seen the recommendations shareable, and of course items are not allowed, but are you saying a slice of pizza is enough for 2 people and so on?
Jason, I don't have an answer to that. We're not given explicit portions and stuff like that.
We
Okay.
did
So just using a proper judgment and reasonable kind of behavior.
I think so, and the reason why we're having this today is that it's our understanding the state has a task force going out and doing inspections. I think some people on the call have had those inspections in the last week, so they are looking at what you are serving. I don't know what kind of guidelines they use to see if the food is sufficient, but we had very in-depth conversations about what sufficient food portions were yesterday, and I don't have an answer, but I will let you know inspectors are going out at the state level and they are asking those questions. So if you're questioning whether a slice of pizza is enough of a portion, I don't know. There's no minimum, but they do have words like sufficient and substantial.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, I'm sorry, while I have you, one other question about the TVs, and this may not apply to the most recent communication. Again, my apologies, but can you clarify what is allowed, what is not allowed, and maybe the reasoning in that? We've been getting reports that other establishments are allowed to play sports games per se, or possibly a movie on a TV, but wasn't sure of the detail there.
Okay, sure. That's a great question. The temporary non-precedent setting outdoor dining program that the city of Boston has been working on since March was done because of COVID. There was no community process. For those reasons, we are not allowing any of these new temporary spaces to have entertainment. You might have a neighbor that went through a public process and had community input and has a full entertainment license, so they are permitted to use their entertainment on their outdoor space because they were properly permitted and went through the whole process. But the city of Boston is not allowing any of these temporary spaces to have outdoor entertainment.
Copy. So if we are pre-existing, there's a possibility, as others have done, that have a previous entertainment license and are pre-existing.
Yeah, I'd suggest giving Rebecca a call or reaching out to our staff, and we can talk to you about your specific questions. It's hard to say yes or no without seeing what your proposal is in writing.
Sure, got it. Will do.
And even if someone does have an existing entertainment license, there's no, what is allowed right now is background music. There is no lawn games, nothing that kind of encourages gathering. So even if that is something that you had previously, it's still not allowed. Ancillary uses are not permitted. Any other questions? Again, you can always call the licensing board or the entertainment office. You can email us. We are here as a resource. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us this morning. And again, as the chairwoman said, and the captain and our lieutenant and detective, we understand that you're doing everything you can to comply, and we want to be here to help.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.